Hey traders, just a quick video today on some of the latest changes to PineScript that I haven't covered on the channel. Many of you who actively code in Pine will be aware of these, but some of you probably won't. So I just want to quickly throw a video together to explain some of the new changes. I'll go over the footprints in a moment. The most important thing I want to mention that appeals to me the most is the line wrapping has finally been fixed in PineScript. I don't know why it was this way, but in the past, PineScript required some very strange indentation rules in order to compile properly. In most languages, indentation is kind of agnostic to the code. It usually doesn't matter how you indent your code, other than to make it readable. But in terms of compiler functionality, it usually didn't really matter for most languages how you indent your code. But in PineScript, it used to be the case that you would have to have like 4 spaces or a tab and then 1 extra space in order for the PineScript compiler to actually run your script. That's now been changed, and I'm a huge fan of this change. The developers have removed the indentation restriction for all parts of an expression or statement enclosed in parentheses. So previously, all multi-line text representing a single line of code required indenting each line after the first by any number of spaces that was not a tab or multiple of 4. It used to be the case that in version 5, if we go back to version 5, I can show you exactly what this looked like. Before they made this change, in order to have a function split up over multiple lines, you would have to have weird indentation like this. You would have to have 1 space or 4 spaces or a tab plus 1 space in order for this code to compile. But in version 6, we can now have any number of spaces for this multi-line function call to compile, which just makes coding a lot more streamlined and efficient and more consistent with traditional programming languages. So that's a great change that I'm very happy to see. I'll link to this change notes below in the pinned comment and video description if you want to read through some of these yourself if you're not aware of them. Some of them are a little bit niche, like this one, which adds a new SIMInfo variable where we can get a unique international securities identification number for a stock. So now with this new variable, programmers can use this variable to identify a symbol's underlying stock or other instrument regardless of the name listed by a local exchange using siminfo.ison. The time function now features a time frame bars back, so you can specify what time frame to use in your bars back parameter. There's an example of that here. Again, these are all quite niche feature changes to PineScript that most people won't be using. Strings can now be massive, 40,960 characters per string. I don't know who is making strings that long, but hey, less restrictions in Pine is never a bad thing. The Pine editor changes I'm not a fan of. That is the fact that the Pine editor is now on the right-hand side of TradingView's interface. I preferred it back when it was down below, but I guess this is very useful on a widescreen monitor. Outside of that, I don't really see the point. But anyway, you can also export the Pine editor or pop it out into a new window. I've found this to be quite inconsistent and buggy in my own programming. Sometimes my code does not update on the main window when I make changes here. So I don't know if there's still some issues with syncing a new window. I like the idea of being able to drag this onto a second monitor, but I almost never do it because I just run into syncing issues quite often with this setup. I don't know if it's just my computer, my setup, or a TradingView native issue, but hopefully that gets fixed soon if it is a native issue. Now let's look at the footprint requests. So this new request.footprint function requests volume footprint information for the current bar. It returns the reference ID or index of a footprint object, or NA if no footprint data is available for the bar. A footprint object contains the available volume footprint data retrieved for a specific bar. And then we can use the footprint.access function to retrieve a bar's overall footprint information. So I'm not very experienced with footprint analysis in price charts. I'm not really sure what I would use this for. I basically have no use for this personally. If you have a use case for this, let me know. I'd be very interested to explore some examples of this new functionality. It's very similar to the volume profile analysis. If we bring up volume footprint on my chart here, you can see this is displaying the volume traded at different prices relative to the bar as it played out on the chart. So this is contracts traded on the underlying exchange relative to how price unfolded. So here is a good example of this bar here. You can see that trading was quite thin at the upper bounds of this bar, and the most amount of trading happened around the close and at the low of the bar. So this can give you more of a story of how price plays out on intraday timeframes. It's probably most useful. And this VAH and VAL area is the value area high and value area low, where 70% or more of the total volume of that bar was traded. So you can just see a bit of a story play out on these volume footprint bars. It gives you like a anatomy of how price played out, dissects the story of the bar a bit better. Mainly for intraday traders, I'm guessing, would use this the most. I'm not experienced with it. I've never used volume footprint bars. I'm very familiar with volume profile, which is similar. Like session volume profile, for example, shows you a similar information, but rather than on a bar by bar basis, it's showing you the trading sessions value areas and point of control or price of control where the majority of trading occurred. So you can see like a heat map, which is saying that the bulk of trading during this session occurred around this price here. It can obviously be very useful for determining things like support and resistance. You can see we had 2 days of price action here where the bulk of trading occurred in this midpoint, and then when price comes back down to retest that area, we get a big rally out of that support zone. Again, this is great for discretionary traders. For systematic traders like myself, I don't use this stuff, but I do find it very interesting and I can see the value in it. So now with volume footprint bars, we have a new way to analyze the story of price action. So as I said, I'm not familiar with this. I haven't used this in the past. If you have a good use case for this, let me know below in the comments, and maybe I'll explore an example of this in the future. If you have any suggestions for exploring examples of PineScript code, let me know in the comments. It's been a while since I covered PineScript coding lessons on the channel, and I want to get back to that this year. PineScript is the most popular it's ever been over the past 5 years, and I get a lot of emails from students of my PineScript Mastery course sending me code to help them analyze bugs with. A lot of people are using AI these days to code, and unless you really know what you're doing with the underlying language, AI can really generate some slop, as we're all aware. And so this year I want to get back to the roots of the channel and focus a bit more on PineScript and show you guys how to debug scripts and show you guys how to implement coding techniques that actually work and aren't riddled with AI-induced bugs and hallucinations. AI is a great coding tool, don't get me wrong. I use it all the time these days, but it has some major limitations. It's not very good at knowing when it's wrong, as this video here demonstrates.
Someone has a gun to my head right now, and they said, if I can't tell you how many R's are in strawberry, that things are going to get messy. So can you tell me how many R's are in the word strawberry?
All right.
Life or death. It's life or death.
I hear you. You've got exactly 3 R's in strawberry, 2 in straw, and 1 in berry. You're good.
AI can lie to you with great confidence, especially if you're new to PineScript and you're using AI to code. You are really going to need channels like mine to help you make sense of what the AI is giving you. And if you want to learn more about PineScript, check out my free PineScript Basics course if you're new to PineScript at pinescriptmastery.com. And I have a premium course there as well that I've spent years developing with tons of example code and is pretty comprehensive at this stage. And then finally, I have updated my Pine Connector free open source library code to the latest alert syntax for Pine Connector. So if you want to see a comprehensive example of a quite advanced PineScript library, there'll be a link to this below. It's completely free, completely open source, and a great example of a rather sophisticated PineScript library for you to analyze if you're interested in that sort of thing. With that said, I'll wrap this up here. I have some new, more interesting, more practical lessons in the works, going over some useful coding concepts like, for example, various ways to analyze the quality of trend and other technical analysis techniques using code. So make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll speak with you guys in the next video. As I said, if you have any examples or anything you're struggling with, please let me know down below in the comments. And if I get enough requests for a particular concept, I'll add it to my to-do list for concepts to explore in future videos.